In this lesson, we're going to isolate Wi-Fi users and wired users for security reasons. In other words, a person on Wi-Fi can't access any computers on the wired system, and people on the wired system can't access any computers on the Wi-Fi. We're also going to isolate who can get to the router configuration. This is in addition to having the PuTTY with the keys. So over here on the left, you'll see we have our firewalls. What I did, I took the original 11 fire rules and I added 3 more to them. This lesson is about what was added and why it was added. We're going to use firewall address lists to create these rules. And we're going to add a rule that has one specific IP address outside of the dhcp range so that people can't be issued that address. And that address was necessary in order to access the router configuration. And then we have an optional portion of the lesson at the end about adding a guest user access point. So let's get back to this here. We added this rule number, which is now rule number 4. And it says on an input chain, someone trying to go to the router, the source address has to be maintenance. Or I should say, if the source address is maintenance and the destination address is router, then we're going to accept it. So these rules came from up here. We went up to address lists and we entered it. We entered a maintenance address list and we called it .97. We created a router address list and we addressed it .1. And then we had a user's address list, which goes from .2 to .255, which is all inclusive of that network. So anybody on the network is considered a user. The router is the only thing not within that DHCP range. So this rule uses the address list, maintenance and router. By the way, when you create a rule, it shows up down here at the bottom. We'll see. Forward, do the same thing, users, destination is users, action, just drop. We apply that, say okay. Notice the rule shows up at the bottom, so you have to move it up to where it should be. So I just want to point that out, that's already been done. I've already moved them up. I've already created the rules, I moved them up. We're just going over them at this point. So I'm going to delete that rule. Our second rule here, drop all users to router config. If we look at it, it's similar to the first one. It's an input chain. Source address is users, destination address is router, which you now know what those are up here in the address list. So if the users are trying to go to the router, we're going to drop it so they can't get there. Fortunately for us, this rule number 4 allows maintenance to get to the router before everybody else is dropped with rule number 5. So these have to be in this sequence. This rule has to be in front of rule 5. Otherwise, rule 5 would drop everybody before you got a chance to test for the maintenance address. So it's got to be in that sequence, 4 and 5 sequence. And then our last rule here is we're preventing users from interacting with each other. If we open that up, we created a chain, a forward chain, which is one user trying to send something to another user. Source address users, destination address users. It's not going to happen. We're going to drop it. So those are the 3 rules that were added to the firewall for this lesson. They're pretty straightforward, except only maintenance computer IP address for router input, drop all users for router input, drop all users trying to talk to other users. This way viruses can't be spread between users. And the users include Wi-Fi as well as Ethernet ports. So they're all covered. So that pretty much includes right down here up to step 10. So step 7, 8, 9, like I say, they have to be in position 4, 5, and 6. The rules have to be in position 4, 5, and 6. Make sure that happens. because they depended on their own sequence, and they should be part of the input chain rules. This first input chain rules up here, accept established and drop invalid. Then drop all not coming from the LAN, which means it's outside of the router. It's coming from the internet. So that's the sequence that has to be used to make sure the rules work properly. The router is in service mode, except we have Winbox enabled. That's the only difference. And notice our DCP for our dhcp server, our address range runs from 110 to 138. Up here we have some address lists. The users run from 2 to 255. And the router's .1, and the main computer has to be .97, and this won't work. So let's demonstrate that. So we're going to shut down Winbox. We're going to go over to our computer. We're going to change the address from what it needs to be to something it shouldn't be. Make it 98. We're going to save that. Then we're going to try to log in with Winbox again. What you're going to find is it never does anything. It just can't do anything because the packet's not getting there. So it just times out. All it can do is time out. It's even that way with our PuTTY. We go to do it with our PuTTY. We'll do it. Open up the router with PuTTY and nothing. No connectivity. So this is a really good lockout to have a certain IP before you can access the router with anything. It's also a dangerous rule in case you lose that lockout address, So notice PuTTY finally timed out. So I just want to demonstrate that at this point in time, we're locked out of the computer. Okay, so now I've changed the address back to 97, which it requires. I'll save that. I'll go ahead and log back in. And I'll show you why this happened. It's because of this rule here. This rule number 5. Can't talk. Rule number 5, if it's a user and it's headed to the router, we're going to drop it. But before that rule, we have a matching rule. If it's a maintenance computer address and he's going to the router, we're going to accept it. So that allows that one unique address, the address right here. This address is the only address that can get to the router. Everybody else falls into this category, and they can't get to the router. So this is a very good lockout, and you've seen how it works. So now we're on step number 10. Assuming you're currently in maintenance mode, disable the position 5 rule and back up to maintenance mode so you don't get locked out. So rule number 5 is drop users to router. So we're going to disable that. We're going to make sure that our IP services has Winbox enabled, and it does. So now we're going to go to Files. We're going to back up our maintenance. The maintenance is backed up, so we're going to go back over here to our IP services. We're going to disable Winbox. We're also going to enable this rule right here, rule number 5. And now we're in in-service mode, so we're going to go ahead and do a files backup. We're going to back up our in-service. backup. So now we got both backups available if we ever had to do a factory reboot and get back to one of these backups. And that completes this method of isolating users and isolating the router from users. Because most of us are now saturated, I've decided to skip the item 13, optional create guest Wi-Fi access point. We'll do that as a separate video because everybody's probably saturated from all this nonsense. That concludes this video.